Evening, Cheeseheads. Welcome to another Monday night edition of the Cheese Room. I'll be your host tonight, Gibbo. You won't be getting a lovely intro off me like you do off Craig, I'm afraid. We'll be getting straight into it. Introduce the guests. To my right, John. How are you, John? All right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. It's good to be back on a Monday night show with you. I just want to say thanks for the love that was thrown out to us on Friday night at the awards show. One mention though, you did just mention his name. Craig didn't really get a big plug, and Craig's done loads of work this year, coming and taken over some hosting, and he's been brilliant. But he's decided to sack it off. He's having a week off because he got upset he wasn't mentioned by caller.
Yeah.
So
He said, I'm not writing any more intros.
Yeah, I thought he was doing Harry Winks lookalikes this week. I don't know.
Yeah, down at Centre Parks, taking some selfies. But and just below me, long time no see, HG. How's it going over there, mate?
It's good. It has been a while, Gibbo.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's been, but suddenly, I mean, you look as handsome as ever. But,
behave yourself, mate. Come on.
But yeah, no, I'm all right. It's my mum is visiting. For those of you that watch Friday's show, will know that she's still here. And so if there are any comments in the background, you know why. And but it's summer. Like, end of school is almost upon us. 9 weeks of holidays round the corner. Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Beautiful. And as well, not been on with you for a while, James. How are things down at Portsmouth Uni? And have you been on since Big Ange has been announced, mate?
No,
you keep
I
calling
haven't.
everybody mate now. It's like as if it's like a...
that's fine, mate. Don't worry. I can't remember the last time I was on, actually. Probably a few weeks ago. Yeah, everything's good down here. It's very, very warm. So I've been complaining about the heat and sitting on the beach all the time, basically. Today's very, very hot. But yeah.
You do wear black all the time. So it's not going to help, is it?
Very true, but also I've started wearing colour, which is scary to me, including blue jeans. But yeah, everything's good. Thanks for having me on. Lovely to be back here as ever, tucking into a delicious beverage.
James, rewind.
Yes.
None of us really believe that you've been wearing colour. No.
Blue jeans.
Hey, he's got into status quo, HG. He's got into status quo.
Spurs fans. At least one of them was.
Yeah, they performed, didn't they, at the Lane years ago, didn't they? Didn't they do some at the White Hart Lane? Sure they did, the Quo. Anyway, it's too hot for this crap. He's been here a week now, Big Ange. So, how, James, we'll ask you, because you haven't, what are your thoughts on Postescoglou coming through the door, mate?
So, first thing I did was I asked my friend, who is a Rangers season ticket holder. He watches like every Scottish game. Genuinely, what do you think about him? Take away the fact that he managed Celtic, and he thought he's like unlucky. But when I actually spoke to him about it, he's like, yeah, he's actually a very good manager. And looking at what he says and the way he plays, I am actually quite excited because we've had two quote unquote winning managers, and they've been dreadful, haven't they? And this guy wins everywhere he goes. Like, he outpossessed and outpassed Pape with a Japanese league team, which no disrespect to them, but they're nowhere near the level of De Bruyne and Rodri, are they?
Did they win?
No, they lost, but they outplayed them with bad players. And that says something to me because he wants to play attacking football, values youth, and he doesn't take any prisoners. And that's exactly what I think we all want, is to see Spurs trying to win and actually playing good football. And I think that's exactly what he delivers. And we do need to change something up at the club after the fiasco of Nuno, Conte, and Mourinho. So, no, actually optimistic.
Happy days. So, basically, he's been here a week now then. We've heard nothing about who his backroom staff are going to be. And then last few days, we've heard a little bit about Ryan Mason staying on. So, he's happy to stay to work under new coach Ange Postescoglou. Obviously, we've been trying to get Gavin Strachan and John Kennedy, but it seems like it's not as straightforward as it should have been. HG, thoughts on this? Because obviously, very mixed, isn't it?
But I mean, this is it. So, like, I would have read that tweet and thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest. I wouldn't have thought anyone could be upset apart from the fact that maybe the club can't get the two Celtic boys over the line. I thought that would be the thing that people would be upset about. I had no idea that people would be upset at Ryan Mason for staying at Spurs. I don't really know why. I don't really understand why. It seems extremely pathetic because he's still so young. And again, he's only ever worked under two very defensive managers. I mean, I don't even really count the Nuno era. Like, Mourinho managed to piss everyone off. And Conte managed to piss everyone off. And Nuno wasn't there long enough. He pissed the fans off. And the fans were angry before he started. So it feels like Mason's only had these very reactive, very defensive managers to work under. And now he gets a chance to work under someone who's completely different. So why wouldn't he stay? Why wouldn't he want that? I feel like Spurs fans massively overestimate his abilities by saying he should go and get a job in the Championship, because I understand why Lampard got one. He never should have. So to prove yourself, at least at youth level, like, there are various managers at Spurs that we've had over the years, like Matt Taylor did well at the under 8 Kieran McKenna obviously was a Spurs player, went to Man United and was there for like a decade before he took on the Ipswich Town job. I don't know why Spurs fans suddenly think that Ryan Mason is the future of Tottenham and that now he's not the main man. He needs to go off and do something else. He's got ages. He's got ages.
Yeah. John, obviously, Dave's saying if we can't get Gavin Strachan, we should get Michaela Strachan in. Is that his sister? But what are your thoughts?
She's a TV host.
Oh, no, mate. I know who Michaela Strachan is. I'm the same age as you.
Yeah, Dave's got a picture of her on his wall still, isn't he?
Still, yeah. Her and Cheryl Baker.
It's not stuck there with blue tack, that's for sure.
Just one. Hey.
Yeah, so, John, what are your thoughts on this behind-the-scenes managerial stuff?
I know you wanted Ryan Mason out, didn't you? You were quite vocal about that in weeks before.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't see what a lot of people saying that. I'm sure he's going to be a really good manager one day, and or I think he will be a good manager, and I'm just like, I don't see it. He's literally like an academy manager who's stepped up to do a few games. It's like, if you do want to be a first team manager, go off and do your bit or whatever. No matter, I know HG saying he's got years, and he has, but like, I've got no great, and I don't mean in a shitty way, but I've got no great desire for Mason if he's to stay, or if he goes. Do you know what I mean? But if you do want to be, if ambition is to be a first team manager, then if that's best for him to go out the door and do it somewhere else, then do it. But I just want it to be. I just want it somewhat fresh. And if the gaffer wants him there, like, that's the rope you got to go down, isn't it? You got to give the manager what he wants. And if that's Ryan Mason, so be it.
From what I understand, Postescoglou obviously has been quite a lot of information coming out. The fact that he doesn't tend to bring people with him because he likes to go into a club and have a whole brand new coaching team, because he likes to have them challenge him.
Yeah,
and to help him develop as a manager, which is one of the keys to his success over the longevity of his career. Yeah. So I think for me, there was a difference between Mason this time and last time. You could tell he had grown as a person and a manager. He's not ready for a Premier League job yet. I understand there's possibly 3 Championship clubs have made inquiries about him as a potential manager. That he is 30, I think 31, is he?
Yeah.
He's still so young. He's got so much time. Not a bad shout. Stay under Ange for 2 or 3 years. Then maybe look at and then you would, to be fair, for all Conte's faults, still a top-class manager. He's been under him. He's been under Mourinho. Nuno will forget. He played under Poch. Played under
Steve Bruce, did he? Somewhere?
Steve Bruce.
Yeah.
But he's played under a lot of people. Played for England once. He's played under different, and he was on loan multiple times. He even went to France on loan, didn't he, to Lorient? So he's been around. He spent half a season there. The manager refused to play him because he didn't want him. Oh. And Mason just knuckled down and said, "No, I'm not going home. I'm going to stay here and work hard." Still, I think he got about half an hour.
Still didn't play.
No. But I think for me, it's also important there is a link. I know people saying Davo's joking that he's the mole, but I do think there's from what I understand, Postescoglou will keep a big distance from the players. he's come out and said that if you speak to all my previous players, I've never had more than a 1 minute conversation with them at any one point. He keeps that distance, and he needs the coaching staff to be that link and to be the ones that are closer to the players. And I think Mason has got that relationship. Has been a coach and also as being the manager for the last 2 months of the season. So I think ultimately it's a good move.
Yeah, they say that the players sort of crave his attention, don't they? Postescoglou, because he keeps that distance and the players sort of crave his attention a bit more. James, got any insight into this?
Well, the thing is, as everyone said, he's very young. For reference, everyone, the age difference between me and Ryan Mason is less than the age difference between me and my dad, right? Like, this guy's young. I mean, he's old for me. He's in his 30s, but, he's young, right? He'd be the second youngest person on this panel. My worry, if he went to a championship club or something, would be it's probably too soon for him. I mean, you look at people like Lampard and Gerrard, who got jobs too big than they ever should have got too early, and now they're basically written off. It's going to be incredibly difficult for those guys Lampard especially. Oh no, what a shame, to rebuild their career as a manager. And my worry is if he took one job in the championship, it didn't go well, he'd be written off forever. So yeah, I get it. He wants to stay, work with a youth team, work in the background as a bit of a coach. Fair enough. As long as Postescoglou actually wants him around, and it's not just Levy putting an arm around Ryan and saying, yeah, stay here, mate, then I'm perfectly fine with it. But he's so young, it's going to take time. He probably needs to stay at Spurs another, 4 or 5 years, then go work somewhere else as a coach. And, maybe, it takes time, but he's so young. I don't think he's a bad influence or anything, and he's definitely growing. So I don't really see the harm in having him here, personally. I don't get the Twitter ramblings from some people.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand. I know he came out and said that he believes he's ready for the job, right, for the Spurs job. When it was available, he came out and said that, which meant he went down in my estimation, because that was clearly nonsense. We've seen it at Spurs, even with Sherwood. Sherwood wasn't even the under-21s manager when he got the job to become the Spurs manager. He was just kind of there. Don't really know if Ryan Mason, was he ever in charge of the under-18s or the under-21s, or was he just a coach?
He was the academy manager for a while.
He was the academy manager, wasn't he?
Well, but again, so is that under-18s or under-21s?
No, they don't.
All of the above. Do you know
Speaking
what I mean?
from experience, HG, sorry, mate. Look, an academy manager doesn't really coach any of the teams. They oversee all the coaches and how things work. Do you know what I mean?
Like a director of football, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For the academy.
Yeah.
But why would you ever have a director of football as a manager of a football club? You wouldn't do that with the Liverpool guy. Michael Edwards isn't going to be Liverpool's next manager. This is what I don't get. Either you want a guy who's actually a coach, who gets out there on the training pitch and says, this is how I want you to play, which we've had before. Scott Parker did that before he went on to wherever he went on to. Was it Fulham first? I can't remember.
Fulham.
He did go Fulham, yeah.
But he was the person making the decisions, picking the teams. If Ryan Mason's just been a pen pusher as an academy manager, what qualification is that for any coaching job? You're basically saying he's managed 12 or 13 league games for Spurs, and he's lost a cup final, and now he's good enough. I'm sorry, it's completely
nowhere
illogical.
near.
So, if he thinks he can learn from Ange, and Ange thinks that it's going to be good to have him around, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
Whether I think Ryan Mason is good enough, I don't, and I don't think he will be for a very long time. But again, I don't blame him for hanging around. He's a local lad. We all know that. I think his wife's about to give birth. All those things.
She had the baby.
Well, she had it.
She had the baby when Stellini was in charge, and I still think that's part of the reason. I do think cost saving is the other reason, because they said if you go, you don't get paid. I do think there's an element of that. But the baby was born within 2 weeks, I think. Oh, did you lose me then?
No.
Oh, you're frozen me. Yeah, I think that's an element because the baby was born not long after Conte went, and I think that's one of the reasons why Mason wasn't put straight in charge. And I think we would have finished the hire if he had been put straight in charge. Personally,
regardless, that's all going to be on. I mean, I don't know what role he'll want him to fulfill in his coaching staff. He probably, if he has done the academy stuff, he'll have more of a link. So, be able to give him a bit more of a sort of heads up on that. But so basically, there's talk today that Big Ange is going to be allowed to bring in 2 members of staff. There's Gordon Strachan's lad, and he's got
Nino's in Portsmouth.
Yeah,
you get that every hour.
yeah. Talk about Kennedy and Strachan being tough to get from Celtic at the minute, and then there's 2 other names I've seen mentioned. Now I know Clement. He worked with Ancelotti, and this other guy, Chris Davis, worked with HG's mate, Brendan Rodgers. Do you know anything about Chris Davis, HG? Or do you not want to talk? If he's assistant to Rodgers, is he just dead to you?
Maybe Chris Davis was the brains behind the operation. I don't know. But no, I've never heard of him. Right? I mean, Paul Clement I've heard of because he went as a manager. He was at Derby and I think Swansea and maybe even somewhere else. Reading, I think.
He went to Real Madrid with Ancelotti, didn't he?
Yeah, he's been an assistant for a very long time, and maybe that's his best role. I wouldn't care. Again, like to me, I just want someone who will help Ange do what Ange wants to do. Don't really care what history they've had. If Ange thinks this is the guy, because Ange clearly, from what we've all seen and read, is pretty adamant he knows what he wants. Yeah. I think we can all see he's like, I want it to be this way. I'm going to do it this way, and people will help him. Like I think he had Harry Kewell as one of his assistants up at Celtic, and Harry Kewell was a joke when he was at Crawley and Oldham.
Crawley.
Yeah. So, but he decided, look, maybe I can help him or I can do something with that. That's fine, but because it's Ange's call. Who knows what Harry Kewell actually did to help Celtic? Maybe he did very little. But the point being that, like, if it's Ryan Mason or Perry Mason, I don't care. It's just got to be Ange's call. He
headhunted Harry Kewell, didn't he? Because I saw an interview where he obviously he talked about not dropping Harry Kewell from the. Harry Kewell talked about Postescoglou dropping him from the Australia squad. Then he just all of a sudden he heard from him and he wanted him to get involved up at Celtic. Yeah. So he must have a really clear picture of what he could have brought. He's not just doing it for shits and gigs, is he, John? Bringing Harry Kewell in. So like HG says, he knows exactly what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to judge a player going somewhere like Crawley, a manager going somewhere like Crawley. It's a different world in those lower leagues, isn't it? So he obviously knows Harry Kewell from Oz, knows what sort of guy he is. Now he knows a bit about the English game, you know, and different and international football. So wherever he's been, if he wants to bring someone like Kewell in, if he wants to use Mason, it's just about having different guys who've got different skill sets and different understandings. Ultimately, Mason's played Premier League football. He played, I don't know, 100 odd games. He wasn't a top player, but he was a decent player. And he's shown, you know, Conte was impressed with him as a coach, supposedly, which is when he first, because Conte couldn't work to begin with, could he? Because he hadn't got his work permit. I think Mourinho quite liked him as Mourinho had Ledley, didn't he? As number 2. That's when sorry.
Well, Ledley wasn't his number 2. Did he have Ledley on the coaching staff? He had that other weird fucker on the.
Sacramento. Yes, he did. Ledley was there as well. That to me was Levy's man on the inside. That was more so, but I do think Mason as that link is not a big problem. So,
yeah. So James, give us the lowdown on Chris Davis.
Chris Davis.
Yeah. That literally ends that conversation there, doesn't it? So
Chris
James
Davis was a youth player for Reading and Wales before retiring in 2004 at age 19. He became a football coach, initially coaching youth teams in England and abroad, becoming assistant manager to Brendan at Swansea, Liverpool, Celtic and Leicester. There we go. But there's talk about Brendan going back to Celtic, isn't there?
Well, it'd be a smart thing for him to do. He can ride the Ange train and get some more trophies and make himself look even better than he... That's just what he does. Right, it is the smart move. I mean, if Brendan Rodgers can do anything, it's pick his jobs wisely. What he does with the jobs afterwards, well, we all know what he can do there. But he picks the next job wisely. He looks to see who's done well and just rides that train. Always has done.
It's probably one of the easier jobs. Well, I don't want to say that, but if you gave me a choice of any club to manage, I would probably. Well, I wouldn't manage Rangers, but I'd manage Celtic. Yeah, because you're going to win the league most years, right? You can't look terrible.
You're in with a shout.
You're going to have better players than everyone else in the league, bar Rangers, right? And it would really annoy my mates. So that'd be funny.
So my only question with Ryan Mason, and I don't want to talk about it any longer because it's been 15 minutes already,
maybe. Yeah.
But like he's part of the coaching setup. He's not the assistant. He's not the number 2. He's just he's basically cone boy, right? He's going to be putting out the cones and maybe doing a bit of filming of the finishing drills. Who knows? But he is not the future of Spurs. He's just going to be one of the coaches, one of the many coaches that will be working at Tottenham over the next 2-3 seasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, none of us really give a toss who his backroom staff are, do we? We're just talking about it because it's been in the news today and we feel like we should have gone over it. Like, as long as Ange is in charge and he gets what he wants, we don't really care, do we? Do you know what I mean? We're just passing time. So, I
am definitely interested to see who is going to be the assistant, but it's not going to be Ryan Mason. So I've forgotten it. Right? Yeah. It's going to be someone else. So I do want to know, but I'm happy it's not Ryan. It was good news. It's good news for everyone that he's staying, and it's good news he's not going to be that heavily involved.
Yeah. So let's get into the juicy stuff now, the stuff that people like. We've had a little bit of debate before which transfer story we're going to come up with first, and we thought this one has probably got the most legs out of all of them, because we started writing them down earlier in the evening, then they just sort of started to fall like dominoes as the evening went on. David Raya, we heard yesterday from Fabrizio Romano, very close to agreeing personal terms. 40 million fee, apparently Brentford want. I don't think they'll get anywhere near that, or that we should pay that. John, thoughts?
Right, number one, and I've said this to a few people on Twitter, the whole just pay the money. Why the bloody hell would you pay the asking price? They've already bought in his replacement. He said he wants to go. He's got a year left in his contract. He's already agreed terms with us. How many other top teams are looking for a keeper at the moment? Possibly Manchester United. But as far as we know, they're not in talks with him at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're in the driving seat. Why would you pay 40 million quid at the moment? Yes, if United suddenly come in, there might be a bidding war and we might have to go up to it. But it would be absolutely ridiculous to do that. The same people who are saying pay the money will then be annoyed when we're short of money at the end of the window trying to buy a centre-back or something like that. You've got to be clever about this sort of thing. Yes, he's a keeper I absolutely want. And if we end up having to pay it, then we pay it. But in the first, the window opens in 2 days, opens Wednesday morning. I know players have been officially signed. Well, they haven't been officially, they've been announced as signing. But let's get it done properly. We don't have Manchester City money. We don't have Todd Bowley money. Although I'm not sure Chelsea really have Todd Bowley money long term, because that's going to bite them in the arse, isn't it? But we've got to be clever about this. We need centre-backs badly, and we need a creative midfielder. So we cannot do our whole load on the goalkeeper. So we've got to be clever here.
And whatever happens, it's going to be David Raya's choice. There's no guarantee. Like, we could say, we're willing to pay 40 million, and David Raya's like, okay, well, I'll wait to see who else is willing to pay 40 million. And then he'll pick the club that he wants. Because as a goalkeeper, like, he's already playing regularly, first team goalkeeper for the 9th best team in the league. So assuming he wants to go richer, right, that means us or Man United or Chelsea. There's really no one else that is looking for a keeper, could possibly looking for a keeper. And then it's up to him. What does he want to do? At Chelsea, if they sell one, there's still going to be a second that might get the nod. So he probably won't be undisputed first choice. And at Man United, well, if they can't sell De Gea, it's going to be something similar. So if he's happy in London and he's settled in London, then it's either us or Chelsea, really. And so I think that Raya knows where he wants to go. And so he's quite happy to play the waiting game, because the longer it goes, like, don't get me wrong, there's a good chance this doesn't happen by the first game of the season. Right? Because we know that the window goes on long. But there's a chance. There is a chance. The longer it goes, it's who's going to blink first. Are we going to pay the money? Weirdly enough, when the fixtures come out on Thursday, or it's Thursday, right? When the fixtures come out, if we've got 2 or 3 very difficult games early on, we might pay the money, right? But if you look at it and think, there's those early games, there's a couple of bankable, winnable home games at the beginning, then you might say, okay, I'll be willing to go with Forster I don't mind going with Forster for the first few games. We did that when we signed Lloris. We had Friedel the first few games of that season, and then Lloris came in after maybe 10 games of being the sub before he became the number one. There's nothing to stop that. But as you said, if Spurs have decided, we don't have 200 million this summer, and if we think we can get him for 25 million later or 40 million now, and that's quite a big saving, I guess we're willing to take the risk. There's no guarantee that he is the one we've identified. It's a logical fit on all sides that Spurs, who like to get keepers or like to get players that are almost out of contract, will go for a keeper who's almost out of contract and lives quite locally. I don't think there's anything really more than that.
James, I'm going to come to you in a sec, mate, because you've done some work on comparables of Raya and our keepers. Just on this comment, we need a top keeper even better than Raya. I understand there's better keepers out there. I said this earlier where the caller put something on Twitter. But at the minute, we've got to look at, obviously we need to get the best keeper available to Spurs. And that's who is willing to come to Spurs as well. We could try and go out and get Onana from Inter Milan. But I assume we could probably...
What's it?
That's it. Onana is his name. Yeah. So we could try and do that. But I don't think he'd be available to us, if you get what I mean. Am I right, John HG, James, with that? Is Raya one of the best keepers available to Spurs at the minute of where we are?
They did, in the commentary for the Champions League final on BT, they did say that there's a good chance Onana will leave this summer.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what fee that would be for. And I did hear I think we both listened to the Fighting Cock podcast talking about Udogie, didn't we, Gibbo? And the Italian journalist on there spoke about Inter and the fact that Inter will name a price and that's it. There's no negotiation. They're although they haven't necessarily got the financial wherewithal they used to have, they won't buckle. So I think Onana will be very, very expensive. I really like the guy at AC Milan, the Fred Magnon, who they only paid 15 million euros for, absolute steal. But again, he'll be top dollar. The advantage of Raya, the Gershwin song, is that he's played in the Premier League. We know what he's good at. He's good with his feet. He was excellent at Spurs a couple of weeks ago in that defeat we had to Brentford.
He could play middle of the park for us.
It's a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest, for me. Can I just bring up this one, Kevin?
Go on.
So Raya, I believe, will be with the Spanish squad. HG will probably, hopefully, nod.
I would say so. I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Spain have got internationals coming up. He won't go back to pre-season training at any club for over a month. So saying getting him in now so he can get settled is a bit irrelevant because he's going to have their standard is 4 weeks off. He might make it 3 weeks, but internationals end on the 21st. So yeah. So he's not going to be straight in the door anyway. He won't be out the first week of pre-season training. Most of our squad won't. I do get what you're saying. We need to get players in so that we don't want to be waiting till the 25th of August. We've got to get the majority of the players. And I don't think we're going to sign loads of players, but we need to get the majority of them in before the Premier League starts. That's the key for me.
Yeah, and just to come to you, HG, before I go to James, with a comment I made about getting Raya in because he's arguably the best available to Spurs. Do you agree with me? Because obviously Caller was saying he's not sure about Raya, and then obviously someone's putting here we need to be getting somebody better than that. But I sort of feel for where we are at the moment, we're not. There's certain players who aren't going to come to us because we're not in Europe. And if you look at it, if you were Onana and us and Chelsea went for him, you'd probably edge your bets and go with Chelsea for a bit more wedge in your pocket. And
it's possible.
Do you know what? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you could look at the Spurs situation and the Chelsea situation and say it's more likely that Chelsea will bounce back quicker.
Yeah,
I mean, you could think that. I don't think there's really much in it. But with Pochettino there, Spurs fans know what he can do. But I think I saw this week that David Raya was in the Opta Premier League team of the season, which I wasn't expecting. And I know it's all stats based, and I have issues with some stats because you don't apparently he saved. The expected goals saved was higher than what he had the best figures. I can't even talk about it. He had the best figures, and you need to watch Brentford games to know whether he's making saves that are out of this world or whether these strikers are just hitting it straight at him. and so like he's making saves that he shouldn't make. But what is that dependent on? But I just think that I know it's a few seasons ago now, but when Emi Martinez went from Arsenal to Villa, right, he'd only played maybe 15, 20 games for Arsenal when they sold him because they decided that Leno was the man, and Villa paid 20 million, which at the time seemed like a lot of money, but now it looks like a pretty good value. But if Martinez wants to move on, which it looks like he does, then like would I rather spend 30 million on Martinez or 30 million on Raya? I'd probably rather go with Martinez. It's an interesting. I don't know. I just think that with Raya, yes, he's good with his feet, and yes, Postescoglou will need that. There's no doubt he will need that. But he also just won the league with Joe Hart, who was terrible with his feet, apparently. So it still seems like Raya wants a big club. That's Spurs. Spurs need a goalkeeper. Let's go with Raya because he's local. And I don't know if there's really much more than that, but I do think it will be Raya's decision. And if Raya decides, I don't care what Chelsea say, I don't care what Man United say, I want Spurs, then we could easily get him for 25 million because Brentford will take the money. At some point, they will take the money. Yeah. They won't say sit in our reserves for a season and leave on a free. They won't do that. So I don't know, but yeah. I'm not massively keen on Raya, but I only ever see him play against Spurs, and usually we do pretty well against Brentford before that last game.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Martinez one as well, HG. I think he's maybe, I don't know how old he is, if he's into his 30s yet or whether he's late 20s, but obviously James has been waiting quietly. He's done a little bit of work this afternoon. So James, give us your comparisons on Raya compared to what we've had at Spurs this season.
I'm going to hopefully convince everyone that David Raya is perfect for us and why he is the best goalkeeper we can get. Okay, firstly, he has a higher save percentage than Fraser Forster and Hugo Lloris. Fraser Forster's is 60% in the Premier League, Hugo's is 67.5%, and Raya's is 77.7%. Raya's save percentage since he joined Brentford has been around 75% plus. It's been 77% this season and last season, which shows consistency. Secondly, another interesting stat, one I think is very crucial, is the amount of crosses stopped by either the keeper coming out to punch it or catch it. He does that around 9% of the time, which is very, very high for a goalkeeper, whereas Foster and Hugo do it around 2 to 5% of the time, which is very, very low. The other interesting statistic is XG against. So in other words, how many saves does the keeper make that are expected to be goals? In other words, did they prevent us from conceding goals?
Worldy saves, James.
Yeah, over an entire season.
Middle-aged man. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a
worldy saves.
Concept. Yeah. So Foster lets in more goals than he should save on an average basis.
Because he goes down in installments. Yeah.
As does Hugo. Hugo actually leaked 7 goals this season, which would be expected to be saved. Whereas Raya, different to that, he actually made more saves than went in. In other words, on every statistical model, Brentford would have conceded 2 more goals had Raya not made those saves. Whereas with our current goalkeepers, we conceded more than we should.
Have.
He's also very good with the ball at his feet. He's from Barcelona, of course he is.
Yeah.
He's not on a lot of money. He's only on 25 grand a week. So, and keep in mind, Foster's on nearly 100 grand, I think. So he wouldn't demand an outrageous salary. We could get him on a relatively good deal. And he wants to come. He doesn't want to move out of London. Fair enough. I wouldn't want to move to Manchester either. So, I think he's the perfect keeper. He's only 27. He's probably got 5 or 6 years in him. For, 30 million or so. Not outrageous wages. He's a massive improvement in the goalkeeping department, in the raw shot-stopping area. We will concede less goals if he plays, and he's good with the ball at his feet, meaning we can actually play out from the back. He is
turn defense into
such a no-brainer. I'm surprised we're going for him, if I'm honest. Well, but I see no argument against him because we're not going to go get Donnarumma. We're not going to go get Alisson. This guy improves a key area in our squad and allows us to play out from the back. Wouldn't cost a fortune and wants to come, seemingly.
But you don't think 40 million is a fortune, James?
Well, it would be to me.
We ain't paying
But
40.
he won't cost
James,
40 million. He won't cost 40 million. He'll cost 30.
what are we thinking he'll cost then? James is saying 30. HG, what do you think if it goes through? Where are you looking the value for him is?
Look, Brentford are no mugs, so if we try to offer add-ons, it won't be trophies involved. But I think 30 is probably a fair price. The Arsenal paid 30 million for Ramsdale when he got relegated, and it felt like Bournemouth had him over. But he got 1 year
Sheffield
left.
United,
So,
wasn't he?
huh?
Yeah.
Sheffield United then, wasn't he? Or was he at Bournemouth then? I get confused. He went back and forth, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. You might be right, but I think the idea that that seems like considering the contract lengths were different, I think 30 seems a pretty fair price. And to be fair, Brentford must know that because they wouldn't have started at 40 if they thought it was a fair price. They'd have started at 50 if they thought 40 was a fair price. So they understand how those things work. But I don't really want to get excited. I just look at it and I think Man United really going to sign the Brentford goalkeeper, and that's awful. But they'll go for a bigger name, most likely. They'd rather have Onana.
They might go for it, yeah.
And so, but Chelsea, I mean, they've spent a load of money on Kepa, and it was not great for them. And then they got Mendy for relative peanuts, and he did pretty well for them. Won the Champions League with them. So, where do you look? I just think there is almost certainly better value out there than 30 million for Raya, 40 million for Raya, but it's more of a gamble. But I do think that, when I've seen Raya play, I've not been magically impressed by him. And when James talks about those stats of, he saves the shots that perhaps he shouldn't have saved, well, but is that down to him, or is it down to the fact that the striker just whacked it straight at him? I don't know the basis of that. But when you look at the City game at the weekend, the Champions League final, Foden's clean through. We all expect him to score the second goal and win the game for Man City, and he hits a P-roller that the keeper just falls to his left and saves. Now, does that make Onana a fantastic keeper because it was a really good chance that he shouldn't have saved and he did? Or is it more to do with Foden just fluffing it? And I don't know enough about the stats to really understand the difference there. How are they making those decisions?
I saw something saying basically Onana's shot stopping is average. He's an average shot stopper. It's the fact, what people rave about is the fact that how good he is on the ball, what he does with the football. His shot stopping.
So he's Pickford.
Isn't great, basically. Yeah. Did you wagging your finger to say something, James, or were you just like...
Yeah, I get what you're saying, HD, but the point is this is over an entire season. Statistical anomalies are usually massively reduced in overall statistics over an entire season because the sample size is large enough.
I was just wondering how they were making the statistic. I understand the idea, but is it done because he's making these world-class saves that I don't see on Match of the Day? Or is it done because, I don't know. I'm not saying it would be a bad thing to do. Clearly, he was in the statistical team of the season. That's got to be a good thing, right? So if you really believe in that, then great. I just question it a little bit because the eye test from what I've seen, maybe he's good with his feet, but is he good at keeping the ball out? And that seems to be the key thing.
Yeah. John, did you want to come in on this, John? I saw you sort of trying to come in a bit earlier.
I was just thinking, and Craig Baldwin has read my mind here.
Yeah.
Gavin Bissouma, a guy that Matt Hayes absolutely loves, went from City to Southampton a year ago. Obviously, they've been relegated. I thought Bissouma was smaller than Raya, but according to Wiki, not always 100% correct. Bissouma's actually slightly, I think Bissouma's 6'2" and Raya's 6'1". They're not the biggest keepers. I was surprised by that.
He got dropped at the end of the season, didn't he, Bissouma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, when the manager changed for the 50th time, Southampton manager decided to bring experience in. Bissouma, I think, is a good keeper. I don't think he's there yet. I think Raya is more of a finished article. I haven't seen loads of him, but obviously, particularly in that game at White Hart Lane, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I thought he was very impressive. I love how calm he's on the ball. After 11 years, and I really don't want to think badly of Hugo because he's been so important to Tottenham over the last 11 years and so good. He has made a few clangers, but my God, I have a heart attack every time the ball goes near his feet. Even Fraser Forster, who's not the best with his feet, has brought calmness to me in many ways.
You can see Raya pinging one into Porro's path, can't you, as he's running onto it? You can see him, like, or Dowie on anyone like that, you can see him pinging a ball or not being afraid to play it into a defender or whatever. But like HG said, with great stats from James, we're not going to know till if we sign him and see him play, are we? We're just not going to know. There's a risk with every type of transfer. So, we'll see where that one goes. The next one we're going to bring up went to shit within about an hour, I think. Tottenham are considering a 50 million summer move for Sancho. The North London club look to rebuild under Ange Postescoglou. All two agents from his camp in United probably trying to stir up interest, saying Spurs keen and his wages are mental. HG, because I know I'll come to you because I know you were a fan of Jadon Sancho out in Germany. What are you? I mean, I think we all know that this sounds like a load of old bollocks, but what are your thoughts on initially when you read it or heard it?
I think it was the same summer that Sancho signed for Man United that Grealish went to Man City, right?
Yeah.
And I know that Sancho had been at City before he went to Dortmund, but it always felt like those two should probably switch. I thought that Sancho was a better fit for what City were trying to do at that point when they had Sterling, and they changed things now with Grealish. But I thought that Sancho, with the fact he loves to play those 1-2s on the edge of the box, where City, when they dominate possession, you can do that. At Dortmund, they would high press, and he got to do that. He wasn't a player for the Ole system that United had, and he's not really been much for Ten Hag this year, although he has been better, I would say. And so I think with Sancho, it's all about what we want to do. If we're going to play the type of football that Dortmund play under Ange, then Sancho would be a very good signing. You could talk about whether we need him because of where he wants to play, and he would play on. To me, he would play on the left side of the attacking 3, 4, whatever is there. But I just think that he's a very good player. I just think he's been terribly misused at Man United, and I've read stories today about he's got a bit of a party boy reputation, and he's on 350k a week and all the rest of it. I mean, that may well be true. I don't read the tabloids to know that, but I think as a footballer, what I saw in Germany, he's an incredibly good player. But again, like most players, you've got to play to their strengths to get the value. 50 million. Okay, I don't see really an issue with something like that. But if we're taking on his wages, that's a massive thing. So to me, like Man United should be lumbered with those wages. No one else, right? If Man United want him to go, then they have to make that sacrifice. Sancho might want to go and may have to make a sacrifice himself, but at no point should Spurs be, you know what? Yeah, 350k. We'll give you that. I don't see that happening. But as a football player, I think Jadon Sancho is actually a very good football player, depending on what you want him to do.
Yeah, James, you having a little bit of Sancho? I got a feeling. Wasn't there talk of us getting Sancho when Kyle Walker went to City originally? Because he was a youngster there then, wasn't he? And there was talk of him coming to us, maybe not as part of the deal, but as a sweetener type thing. James, are you having a bit of Jadon Sancho?
In regards to the deal, I remember my lovely father above me saying something about that to me in the car once.
Heavenly Father, John.
Vaguely. Yeah, I mean, Sancho's underlying numbers are good. Even this season, they've actually been fairly all right. He creates a reasonable quantity of chances. He's overperformed XG. He's performed in basically every underlying statistics better than Son has this season, which you wouldn't expect. If you look at his last season in the Bundesliga, back when a team was actually playing to his strengths, all his numbers are really, really good. Attempting in the top 1% of passes, very high pass completion, nearly 7.7, nearly 8 progressive carries a game, 5 progressive passes a game. He played brilliantly in his last season, and I'm not hearing anything about the Bundesliga being significantly a weaker league than the Premier League. Creating 5.5 shot creating actions a game is brilliant, right? He is a fantastic player who's possibly poorly utilised at Man United. Now, he is on 350 grand a week. Do I think he's going to come to Spurs? No. He won't come to Spurs. But 50 million. Okay, he's willing to take a more reasonable wage, which would still be high for us. I don't know, 175 grand a week or something. Would I take that? I think maybe because he's very young. You could get a lot of value out of him long term. And Son is going to move on in the next 2 years, probably. I can get behind it a bit because I do think Postescoglou is the kind of manager who could get him back up to those underlying numbers and really kick on, especially if he's undervalued at Man United at the moment. It would just depend on a lot of finances falling in the right place. Plus, I do wonder, is an attacking option that's possibly a larger risk than other options we could go for when we already have, Richarlison and Kulu sitting there, when we need urgent defensive reinforcements and midfield reinforcements? Is that the right move now? But I do think if he did come, which probably wouldn't, he would do well under Postescoglou. I do think he is a good player, personally.
John, what are your thoughts? Because obviously Danjuma loan doesn't look like it's happening. Lucas is finally on his bike. So what are your... I mean, it seems a pretty long shot, doesn't it?
So first thing,
probably
I don't think it's going to happen. I think, Paul's obviously shot it down anyway, isn't he, very much? But I think, I can't remember if somebody in one of our chats said that Danjuma would have been perfect for Postescoglou, ironically. But obviously it doesn't like we're gonna take up the offer, and I doubt he'll want to come back after the end of last season. But the one thing we need to think about is Postecoglou's game is all about high energy.
Yeah,
we've probably got the most physical league. I know the Scottish League's very fast, but there's teams that Celtic are able to play. They can have easier games at certain points. The Premier League, you don't really get easy games. Very rarely do you get easy games. So you're going to have to rotate pretty much the whole team at times. And I don't mean you make 11 changes. I mean you make 1 or 2 changes a game. And you drop. That's what the top teams. That's what Pep does all the time. He takes De Bruyne out. He puts Gundogan in, or he puts some or Foden in. He keeps rotating one player at a time or 2 players at a time to keep them fresh, and that's what we need to look at. So there is some sense to buying a player like this, or someone said in the comments about maybe if we got a loan without an obligation. But I don't see it.
As well,
Why would United give us? Why would United give us a player who played a lot of games for them this season when we are competing with them ultimately?
I mean, the point here is like, I don't think any of us see him as a priority. I really don't. We've got Son. If we're that interested, we've got Bryan who can play down the left. We've still got Perisic who can play down the left. Perisic may not be an Ange fit, but he still exists. And so I just think Sancho is probably a good player for something that Postescoglou wants to do. But as a lot of the comments have talked about, we need players in other positions. We need people that can play those maybe 2 number 8 roles that Ange seems to like. We don't really have a creative one that will do that. We've got lots of people who could possibly become that. But again, I don't think Sancho is a priority, even though I think he's a very good player and would work really well. It's just not a priority.
Yeah, but I don't want to see Richarlison playing out wide for us. I'd rather see him get more minutes playing down the middle, which probably isn't going to happen. So I think you do need a different type of player, because he'd be different to any of the wingers we've got. Like I said, I don't think it'll happen, but I wouldn't mind seeing. I wouldn't mind seeing him. Maybe it'll be one of them opportunistic things Tottenham do. Maybe United will need to loan him out towards the end of the transfer window, and we'll sneak in there and get him on loan or something like that. But
no one's going to pay those wages. Even the clubs that could are not going to do it. So it feels like if United really want shot of him, or if he really wants to leave, something there has to change. Because I don't think any football club, even City, who could probably do with him, to be fair, I do think City it would be a good fit for them. That United will never sell to them. But I just think that it's a pipe dream that's almost certainly for this summer just not a reality.
No, I mean
we've
got
Alex Scott quickly, Gibbo.
Yeah, I've seen him play a couple of times. He looks decent. He looks like the type of player that Spurs, we took a punt on Dele Alli, didn't we? Pleat bigged him up. We took a punt on him and he was decent. Oh yeah. But that kid looks good. I've not seen a lot of him, but obviously my lads at Cheltenham, and there's a few Bristolians there who I talk to, and they rave about him. They're basically saying he's going to go. They're going to get Bristol are going to sell him. They're going to get decent money for him, and he is a really good player. So I think that's the type of thing we should be looking at. We should be definitely looking at that.
I can tell you this, Gibbo, and I do have some links because I don't know if you know he's a Guernsey lad, and my wife is from Guernsey, and my father-in-law was involved with the football club for a little while, so I know one of the directors at Guernsey FC, and I spoke to him last year about Alex Scott because Seb was the one that on that Seb's little transfer show last summer said we were looking at Scott, and I spoke to the guy at Guernsey, and he said us and Villa were both inquiring about him, and you can see him going to Villa the way Villa were bringing kids for at that time. Whether that still happens now under the new manager,
Ramsey now, haven't they? Ramsey's play,
yeah. So I think he's an exciting talent. I don't know what Bristol would want.
Here's the question. Sorry, if we're only going to get one, let's imagine, right? You could pay 40 million for Maddison or 25 million for Scott. What would you do?
Maddison. But I don't think that's the question. It's where does Maddison go is the question.
No. But I'm just saying, if that was a situation that we could get Maddison for 40 million, and he wanted to come to us, or we could get Scott for 25 million, who I think we all know he probably does want to come to us because he's a Spurs fan. Right? So if that's the choice, what would you go for? If you were the director of football and you could only get one, right? What would you do?
I think it depends on the picture, doesn't it? The jigsaw. How much do we need to spend on centre backs? Because God knows we all know we need some centre backs seriously. Yep. So,
because I know I would totally go Scott.
Yeah,
I would totally go Scott. It's not even a question for me.
The next player we come on to, and the HG. I don't know if you've heard me say on here before. Maddison's good. What I've seen of him, really good. But he gives me David Bentley vibes. I get David Bentley. I do. Bentley was good and he'd come to Spurs, and then after watching him for 10 games, you're like, this ain't the bloke that...
What was that about? What did Miss Mother HG shout about?
Probably laughing at the David Bentley comment.
Yeah.
Obviously with the delay, right? So when we say it...
Randomly, I did see David Bentley in Guernsey a couple of years ago as well, on holiday.
When he came to Spurs, he was just rubbish in the end. I just thought he was rubbish, so I'll get Bentley. So coming on, what I was going to say is this guy has also been linked. I don't know how much people have seen of him, but if you were to get say Alex Scott, it's not Alex Scott. That's is it Alex Scott?
Yeah, Alex Scott. Yeah,
they're both Scott.
And I've seen this guy play. I've not seen loads of Celtic, but what I've seen, this guy gets around the pitch, and I like the look of him. I've liked what I've seen. So obviously, I've gone off and done my own little bit of YouTube scouting, as you do. Mm-hmm. And I like what I see. Obviously, you're moving to sort of a higher league, but we'll come to James. Any thoughts on Hatate?
As an attacking option, he doesn't look super impressive. I mean, 14 goal contributions in the Scottish Premiership for the best team in the league isn't super impressive. There's not a lot of information about his underlying numbers because I suppose every stats guy they send up to Scotland weirdly ends up in a pub or something, which is crazy. So they don't remember to write all the stats down. I haven't seen a lot from him. My friend who watches Scottish football thinks he's pretty decent. But it is a big step up from the Scottish league to the Premier League, you know. So
he plays one of those eights, doesn't he, James? One of the attacking eights. He plays that role, doesn't he? Because I know Phil's put in there. So you'd play he'd be one of the guys that attacks the half spaces or whatever trendy word we use, getting in the channels. But that's what he does, I think.
I suppose, he won the Japanese league 2 years in a row. He won at Celtic. He made that massive cultural shift, very easily, with his underlying numbers saying basically the same, and they started to improve. He's only 25. I don't know, because he probably wouldn't cost very much. He can't be on very high wages. It would be, I think, a very low-risk transfer. Maybe it'd go all right. Maybe he'd be better than we expect. Maybe he'd just be mediocre. But that's one of those things that's hard to say. And ultimately, if Postescoglou thinks he can take a step up, then I would support that transfer, just on the basis that I think it's very low risk. But I wouldn't be excited, shall we say.
John?
I might be wrong, because I really haven't seen him play.
Yeah.
But I've heard from what I've seen and read that he's more of the left-sided of the three in midfield. Now, bearing in mind that Spurs have Lo Celso and or Ndombele that in theory, at least, could do that, it seems like a waste. I would much rather see Lo Celso play that role because that's what he does for Argentina. He plays on the left of a three. Now he may not want to be at Spurs. I understand that's a possibility. He may love to go to Villa and be with Emery again, and we could. So I get that. But if you're going to ask me, do I want to spend some money on a guy that's never played Premier League football, or do I want to actually use a guy that we know is a good player? He may not have done it too much for Spurs, but we've seen him be a good player, and this system would benefit him, I think. So that to me, like Hatate might be great, but he's not 2021. He's middle aged for a footballer, if I can say that. And well, yeah, what's the difference? Why wouldn't you want to see Lo Celso given that opportunity, considering we already have him?
I don't know if John will come in on this, but the talk is that he's burnt his bridges, isn't it? That he's a bit of an arsehole. And know more about Postescoglou than I'd know. Is that type of vibe going to... I mean, it might be different with the new guy, but is that vibe going to...
But like, if Postescoglou is this distant person...
Yeah.
Who, like, I mean, again, the role of a manager and a player are completely different, and I get that. But I never got the impression while Lo Celso was at Spurs that he wasn't liked. It only came out once he'd gone that he wasn't liked. So I was always a bit, I'm not sure if I really believe that one. And I still don't. Now, maybe it was Harry Kane that didn't really like him. Maybe it was just the Spanish-speaking group that all got moved out.
Yeah.
Because Reguilon was there, and obviously Lamela went. That whole kind of Christmas party vibe has pretty much all disappeared. I don't know. Like, I mean, thanks Tim for this because he obviously knows Hatate more than me. It's like, what do we do with what we have? Because we're not going to be able to sell them for a fortune. So yeah, like that's a question that Postescoglou will have to make, and that decision have to make pretty quickly, because. Yeah, like Celtic won't sell him cheap for sure.
No, so like John, coming on to you, obviously, I don't know if you know much about him, but it's like we've said, backing the manager doesn't just mean buying him any player he wants. It's like, keep getting rid of players he doesn't want there and stuff like that. So do you know anything about Hatate? Have you got any big opinions on him?
He messaged me earlier and I had to Google him because I didn't really know. I'm not going to lie. I don't watch Celtic very often, so I didn't know much about him.
You must have watched YouTube by now, and you must have seen what
people
think
about him on Twitter. I had children to deal with. Anyway, what I would say is the advantage bring him in is he knows Postecoglou's system, and Postescoglou knows him and trusts him. So you automatically get a player in midfield who can adapt that role very quickly. So that will help the turnaround with Postescoglou coming in. With Lo Celso, I guess the point with him and Ndombele is they've got 2 years left on their contracts.
Yeah,
I think. So now is probably Ndombele, I'm not sure we're going to be able to sell him. I think he'll just be loaned for 2 years.
Let's not get into it, or else James will go off
on with Celso, there is talk about Villa being interested. It's probably the last chance we can get a decent fee for him. I imagine Postescoglou will have a look at him. There's a good chance I reckon he might want to see them all in pre-season training. But the trouble is, they're not going to see them till late July, probably when they come back from Australia. Unless some of those guys come.
I think they'll all come before Australia. I think they're all going to go to Australia. Yeah. That to me is the cut-off
They're going to go to Australia on like the 10th of July, though, aren't they?
Yeah. So you get 3
weeks.
So
they're going to go straight into their pre-season.
I think the internationals that play until the 20th, 21st will get a 3-week holiday, and they'll be on that plane to Australia. If only because Ange has said you have to be there. If you want to be considered, you get on the train.
To be fair, they will have just had 2 weeks off or a week off, won't they, a lot of them?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about Villa for Lo Celso, though. They've just got Tielemans in, haven't they? I know they're probably slightly different, but they've got the kid they got from France on a free last year. Decent player. Yeah. Tielemans. Is it Dier? I can't remember his first name. Is it Diaz they got? The kid who scored the free kick against us?
Douglas Luiz.
Midfielder. Douglas Luiz,
Douglas
yeah.
Luiz.
Ramsey plays in that midfield three, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So
They may not need him anymore. If they've decided that they'd rather get Tielemans on a free and pay him the wages that would have been a transfer fee for Spurs, then okay. That's an easier choice to make, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Lo Celso and Tielemans are probably around the same age, and Tielemans, again, there's lots of things that are against him, but they've decided that's what we want, that's what we need. We'll go with that. So it's crazy. Like I think Hatate is about 18 months younger than Lo Celso. So he is a bit younger, and obviously he knows what Postescoglou wants, which has got to be a massive bonus considering no one else at the club will really know how to do what he wants to do. But it's those of us that knew about Postescoglou before he was at Celtic. Well, we don't know anything about Hatate, but I was looking just now at his Wikipedia, and his career has been very much like Mitoma's.
Yeah, he was with Mitoma.
He didn't play professional football until he was 22. Which
he was at uni or something.
Yeah, he was at university, same as Mitoma. So this idea that no one's really heard of him because he's only played 100 professional games, something like that, somewhere between 100 and 150. That's not a lot. But Postescoglou will decide it. If he wants to go for him, we will go for him, and we will probably get him.
He fucking gets around the pitch. He works hard. Technically, he's good, and he'll have a shot from outside the area. What I'm saying is, obviously, you don't know, but when you look at the raw ingredients that are there, he seems to be everything that Postescoglou would want in a midfielder. I mean, we might look at someone, a bigger name player, but it was brought up today, and I don't hate that idea. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll come on to, I think, but we're all going to be resigned. I think this is a lot of Spurs fans. We've seen little bits and pieces. Maddison to Spurs. I mean, TalkSport said Spurs were opening talks with Leicester, so pretty much if that Alex Crook or whatever his name is starting to talk about it, then it's not got very much legs at all. But John, James Maddison situation. Give us your thoughts on it, mate.
So, from my understanding, is he wants Champions League. Our lack of Europe is our biggest. He wants to move to London, I believe, but our lack of Europe is the huge
European
problem.
Football.
He doesn't really want to move to Newcastle, but they've got Champions League. So, and this season he needs to play. So I would say, I know that in January, apparently City were talking to Leicester about him. I think going to City would be a mistake for him because you've seen what's happened to Calvin Phillips this year. He's hardly played at all. We've got, Euros? Got the Euros, haven't we, next summer? So he needs to be playing regularly. So it's a big decision for him. He's just got himself into the England team. So he needs to keep playing. Yeah, well, he played the last couple. He played the last game, didn't he? I think did he get man of the match? I think for England the last game. We'll see if he plays.
Who he played?
I'm pretty sure he got man of the match. He certainly got plaudits for his performance. So he will. They're playing. They've got a huge game away at Malta on Friday. So I imagine there's a good chance he'll play. He'll start in that. He needs to pick the right club. Now you could say Newcastle with the Champions League. From his point of view, would be a good move. But
he
can sit past a year and go, actually, we can launch Spurs. They haven't got loads of games this year because I think Matt Hayes did a tweet today saying if Spurs get to the FA Cup final and the League Cup final, they'll play 54 games or something maximum, or 51 games or something. And our average over the last 5 seasons has been higher than that.
Yeah.
So because we played Europe, we've seen Chelsea win the league when they didn't have Europe. So Arsenal got a boost for it when they didn't have Europe. It does help you as a team, especially when we're going to be playing this high energetic football and trying to adapt to Ange's style. So I'd love Maddison to come in. If we can't get him, let's get Alex Scott, as HG says. But we 100% need a player who can do something different that we don't have at the moment. Or we do. He's Harry Kane. He's the one we've got who can unlock a team with a pass, and that's what we need.
I think that will happen. HG, I think we will get somebody like that in. But what are your thoughts on Maddison, mate? What are you? Where do you stand with that whole thing?
I disagree with John on what he said about Maddison to Man City. I think that would be a great place for him to go. I really do, because he will be playing 20, 30 games a season for City. We talked about they always rotate. Well, they do. And we've seen that De Bruyne got injured in the Champions League final. He's also 31, 32. If he's going to play for City, he's probably going to play in that position. So like Grealish, we saw the first year he was pretty underwhelming, and then second year, and he's now the guy for that position. There's nothing to suggest that Maddison couldn't be that for City. So if I'm Maddison and City say, we want you, I'm there like a shot. I wouldn't even think about it. If he wants London, then that changes things a little bit. But to me, no. If City come in for you right now, you go to City.
To London is different to Newcastle to London, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it's weird. Like, I like Newcastle as a city, so I understand why people don't want to go there, but I've always liked being up there. But again, if he goes to Newcastle, they don't really have that big player yet, right? Because Bruno, when he went there, no one really knew him. So even though he seems to be the heart of the team, same with Isak. They've bought a lot of players, but they don't really have that big name leader of the team. And Maddison, if he went there, may well be that kind of, the goldfish bowl. He might be in it, like Jermaine Genius talked about at Newcastle. He would be the one to come in, and people would expect him to take them maybe to another level or be something different. And yeah, I think if I'm Maddison, maybe he wants that opportunity. But if he doesn't want to go to Newcastle because of the city, and he's looking at big footballing places, I don't know. But I just think I would rather sign Scott and Hatate than sign Maddison, and it would be probably around the same price for the two of them.
Yeah. All I'm saying, HG, for his England hopes for next summer, I think you're right. Second season, Bernardo, second season, got in the team, didn't he? And it's just that first season when these guys get signed, they don't get as much football. And that might affect him, but it'd be interesting to see what happens with Phillips next season. If Gundogan is going to go, if he'll get any more football or not. But I do agree, it'd be a no-brainer as a footballer if he can look past the next year. If he can look the next 5 years, he'll win Champions League medals. He'll win Premier League medals,
and he'll play. I mean, you look at James Milner's career for the last 10 years, basically. He was a squad player at City and then a squad player at Liverpool, and he won a buttload of stuff. And he was he was never really seen as a squad player. He was a valued member of what they were trying to do. Now, Maddison may want to be more of the main man. He certainly gives that impression off when you see him. But I don't know. I just think that if I was him, right, which I'm clearly not, but the idea of going to City would be massively appealing. And I'm just not sure. I wouldn't recommend Spurs to him, and I'm not sure Spurs really should. If we're trying to build something over the next few years and we're trying to build a team, I want someone who's going to be 24, 25 in a couple of seasons, not 28, 29. That's just me. But he's clearly a very good player. There's no doubt about it. But I don't really see it being a fit for either party.
James, on to you. Maddison, what are your thoughts on the whole thing? I see him as a number 10, and I don't think Postescoglou plays with a number 10, does he? He plays with two 8s and a front 3. So anyway, on the whole situation, Spurs, Newcastle, Maddison, how do you see it going?
Well, he's had 19 goal contributions in 30 Premier League matches this season in a really terrible team. Those are impressive numbers, and they're pretty much what XG expects. He overperforms XG in terms of his goal scoring a little bit, but that's fairly normal. On the one hand, I get what you're saying about the fact he doesn't naturally fit into, a Postescoglou formation, but at the end of the day, starting formation does not dictate one's role in modern football. I can see him in that midfield in a slightly more advanced role. Whether or not he would be able to keep up defensively and it demands of a slightly deeper role is a different question, and that would ultimately come down to the quality of the coaching that could be administered to him. But his underlying attacking numbers are very good. His defensive numbers aren't great, but he's never been in a position where he has to do a lot of that. Yeah, I like him. Look, if we could get him for a reasonable quantity of money, absolutely sign him. He is a good player. He's better than Alex Scott. Alex Scott has done. I'm sorry, I haven't watched him, but I can look at his underlying numbers. He's not done very much in the Championship. I don't care. Maybe he did a back heel or something. But Maddison is way more impressive statistically, and stats are factual. So I'm going off the literal evidence. Yeah, I would take Maddison. I'd be kind of excited if Maddison came. But
I'm 40. I'm in my 40s, so I use my eyes. The stats I can't get my head round. But yeah, James, like I said, he gives me, I think he's a decent player from what I've seen, but he gives me David Bentley vibes if he come to Spurs. I just think he'd end up turning up and we'd have this player who we're all, I was about to say, well, player we're all wanking over, and then he'll turn up and he'll just won't be the player we thought he was. But, what he needs to do, if we're going to get him at Spurs, he needs to do what all of us do, listen to our missus and move to London, doesn't he? We all do what we're told. That's what he'll need to do if we're going to get him at Spurs. But one more, somebody who I do not have a clue about. John told me earlier that apparently he's a really good player. We're talking about centre-backs. Victor Nelson, HG. Do you know anything about this guy?
Not a great deal, I'll be honest. I didn't really watch him at Copenhagen, and I've seen a couple of Galatasaray games, but nothing too much. It seems like he's a ball-playing centre-back, kind of in the mould of Joachim Andersen. I mean, I know that's a Scandinavian link, but still, this idea that he's a decent defender, he's better than probably... None of us want to see Sanchez come back, or Dier, or, Tanganga, or whatever. It's in that awful price range that Davo doesn't like, where it's between 20 and 30 mil. But last year Kim was at Fenerbahce, and so why couldn't this guy be something special? I don't know. He's not left-footed, which is what we want more than anything. But if we've decided that he's got an upside to him, and we think that maybe Romero's not going to be at the club for that much longer, he might want out pretty soon if next year doesn't go that well. So it makes sense to look around for someone. But if it happens, then perfect. But I can't say I know too much about him as a player.
John, you said that you'd heard he was a good player. Is that you Googling or YouTubing? Or
no, just Twitter search and WhatsApp chats. People are saying he's a decent player. I gather the buyout clause is 25 million euros, which is relatively cheap. I don't know what the exchange rate is, but about 22 million pounds. I'm guessing as a rough guess. Ask Mother HG, she'll know. She'll shout in a minute. But yeah, I mean, Gary's saying Toby-esque, ping. But from what I gather, Ange doesn't like the ping from the centre backs. He doesn't want it pinged. He wants it on the floor.
Absolutely.
And apparently, there's times when he's told his players off for hitting it overhead height. He's a bit of a five-a-side man. Keep it low.
James,
so
got any little bits on your computer for us, mate? Can you hit us up with any stats?
Not many. Unfortunately, my statistical analysis doesn't reach to Turkey. Interestingly, though, he seems like another Romero. This guy racks up a lot of yellow cards.
Aggressive.
He calmed down a bit, but he had 7 in his first season at Galatasaray. He managed 10 in one season. That's impressive. Not many red cards, though. And he scored a whole 3 goals his entire footballing career. That is my extent of my knowledge to him.
So another one that if Spurs are to secure his services, we'll have to wait and see. I'm just going to put this up because I love this.
I thought I'd get that ready, Gibbo, just purely because of
was that did
Gary's
we put up this on the Friday show?
Hojbjerg right up the list for completed passes, but they're all sideways. They're not. Lots of them are backwards.
And that's why you look at a statistic called progressive passes, which shows how often the player passes the ball forward in conjunction with completed passes.
So, Big Ange, been in charge for a week then, boys. How have we found his first week? Are we like the players we're being touted with? Does it excite you, James? Are you thinking, yep, good times are coming back to the lane? Or are you a bit meh?
There seems to be a coherent strategy, and he seems like he knows what he wants to do. Everything he's saying seems very positive, although I must say I'm a bit scared that he said he'd make us proud. That terrifies me a little bit.
Make us proud.
He inferred that.
He dropped it in, yeah.
Yeah, that scares me a little bit. But when you look at the kind of players we're linked to, they're all players for this modern progressive style of football, which is, I think, what most of us want to see, right? And they all make sense. And that's the scary thing. They do all make sense for us a little bit. And okay, some of them are big risks than others, but they're all no-brainers, I think. I'm quite excited. I'm more optimistic than I've been since, last summer, because I thought we were going to be good under Conte. But even if we're bad, even if we lose, I think we're still going to play good football. So I think we're going to, we can sit here in, 5 months' time and go, oh, we lost 4-3. But we played really good football. At least we'll have had something nice to enjoy other than a 1-0 loss or something. So,
yeah.
The silver lining, I'd say.
Yeah. HG, weekend, you still buzzing, Big Ange?
Do you remember 10 days ago before he was signed and the rumours started coming out that he was our number one guy and what felt like 3/4 of Spurs Twitter went off their rocker, right? The idea that someone from Celtic, who is this guy? He's not done anything, blah, 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 blah. Have spent the last week since he was appointed saying, oh, I've now done some research and I like this about him and I like that about him, which is just like, so you knew nothing about him beforehand when you said he was rubbish. And now you've actually had to bother to do some research. You quite like the bloke. I've enjoyed watching them backpedal, completely unaware of how ridiculous they look. That's been the main thing of the last week for me. I think Ange will be a great appointment. I really do. So I'm excited. And whoever the players that come in, whoever goes, I do believe that Ange will be the one who decides. I don't think we'll get a director of football before the end of this window. If we do, Ange will still be the one who really decides who he wants to keep. And I'm excited about that because we've got a load of players that we might want to get rid of. So yeah, how could I not be excited? I'm sad that I have to wait 3 weeks for him to start, that I have to wait 4 weeks for us to be in Australia for the first game. Of course, it's against West Ham and will probably bring their trophy with them to make themselves feel a bit more special. But I just, how could you not, after 4 years of watching nonsense, how could you not be excited at a guy who says, I do things the way that Tottenham like things done? And I will do that regardless. Yeah. And if it doesn't work first time, we will do it better. Like this idea that this is it. I quite like that. We may not have the world's best players to be successful at it all the time, but I think we'll be a lot more successful doing it than we have been in the last few years playing the way we have.
Yeah, we won't be going to Sheffield United and stinking the fucking joint out, will we, John? We will be going to Sheffield United in a quarter-final or whatever it was we went in the round before the quarter-final, and we'll be going up there to win, won't we? So how are you feeling, John? Weekend? Well, where's your head at?
The Sheffield United thing, if we had the first half the way we did this year, those walls be shaking in that changing room. Yeah. There'll be teacups going, all sorts. That, they will come out a different team. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad he seems to have had no holiday at all yet. He seems to be quite busy, to be honest, doesn't he? Having meetings and all sorts. Feel a bit sorry for his wife. But I think we're already getting transfer rumours. There's been years in the past where we've had to wait till mid-August before we have anything. We seem to be getting links. There's stuff coming out. Hopefully we will. I think Bissouma signed, I think it was a week later than now last year because I was on holiday at the time. So, and that came out of the blue, didn't it? That was a bit, we sort of got a day's notice and suddenly it's done. It'd be great if we could do something like that. But because we've got the internationals on, it might be a bit held up. But yeah, I just want to bring up Next Level's comment. There's one reason, it's commercialism. That's why we're going to Oz. And as it happens, we picked now a manager. That is going to be, last year we obviously went to South Korea and it was all exploded because Sonny was there. This is going to go just crazy in Oz. We've got big Ange in. Sorry, anyway. But yeah, I'm happy. We've got someone who wants to play fast, attacking, fun football. It's going to be good to watch. Yeah. And I'm not going to hear that T word from Gibbo once this season. Am I, Gibbo?
Well, no, I'm not going to say it. I'll start from now. We're not going to have a certain kind of football that I do not want to see. So, yeah. I'm glad. I'm hoping not to use that word all season, John. But look,
you're saving Gibbo. Sorry, Gibbo. You're saving your pennies, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like you're going to go to the first home game of the season, and you're going to be front row with your Ange mask and your pet kangaroo,
Full kit.
I hope they sell him in the shop.
Full
Come
kit.
on, Levy, get that on.
I want to be stood behind him and hear him shout, "Don't pass back." I'll be like, "Oh yes, fucking."
I'll tell you what, Steve Diver better get that on
whatever
camera.
they say.
Diver's got to get that on camera, isn't he? Ange can.
That's it. Injected in my veins. Don't pass the fucking ball back. Beautiful.
None of this fucking long ball fucking nonsense, eh?
But yeah, listen, guys. Great show. Great comments. We've been going an hour and 20 minutes. HG, thanks for coming on. Good to have you back on with us, mate.
No, cheers. Always fun to talk Spurs. Always. So thank you.
And James, thank you for coming on. Thank you. As last season you did, and I think a nice little niche you've made for yourself, getting some stats for us. So appreciate that today, mate, and giving us a little bit more context about on some of these players for people who are of a certain age who, don't know about all this stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, all you old fuckers. Yeah, lovely to be on as ever. I love talking about Spurs, especially when I have something to actually be positive about and not just negativity. It's nice that we have some optimism at the moment. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Lovely to be on as ever. Nice start to my day.
Yeah. And John, the guy who does all the computery stuff, I'll come to you to finish off because as well, I know you're going to end the broadcast so I don't mess it up, aren't you? So thank you for coming on.
I love, thanks, Gibbo, that Mother HG liked the corked hats, the 50k corked hats comment, because we got that on the delay. That was brilliant. I will be back on Wednesday with the Hoyles, Jack and Isaiah. Got space for one more if I find someone else. We will be discussing the opening of the transfer window, where I'm sure Daniel Levy will be opening his wallet and the flies will come out. Oh, is she there? Is she there, HG?
Busy week.
Is Mother there? Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute, mate.
Yeah, I muted it because I can hear my daughter screaming. She wants me, and I got to go.
Right,
time to end the show.
Come on, Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.